It was Claire's laughter that really hit me, her light, carefree giggle, the kind she used to save just for me. But this time I wasn't the one making her laugh. I stood outside our bedroom, the door slightly ajar, allowing me a glimpse of what was happening inside. Claire was on our bed, but she wasn't alone. A man sat next to her, his hand brushing against her leg like he belonged there. Like this was his spot. My heart pounded in my chest, every beat making me feel more nauseous. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. I had told Claire I'd be out late, catching up with an old friend over drinks, maybe watching the game. But those plans fell through and I came home early thinking I'd surprise her. I hoped we'd have some rare time together, one of those fleeting moments when things felt right again. Instead, I found her with him. At first, I didn't make a sound, my mind racing too fast to process what I was seeing. They hadn't noticed me yet, too absorbed in each other. Claire was laughing at something he'd said, her face flushed, her hand casually resting on his. I stood there frozen, thoughts swirling wildly. Who was this guy? How long had this been going on? Was this the first time? No, it couldn't be. They were too comfortable, too familiar. This wasn't a one-time thing. Before I knew it, I was moving. I stormed into the room, the door slamming against the wall with a force that shook the house. Claire's laughter stopped abruptly, like a radio cutting out. She turned to me, her face draining of color, her eyes wide. "What the hell is this?" I shouted, my voice harsher than I'd ever heard it. The guy flinched but didn't move from the bed, a smug look slowly spreading across his face. Claire, though, didn't flinch. She didn't scream, didn't try to explain. She just sat there, staring at me, her lips parted like she couldn't decide whether to apologize or lash out. Then, as if things weren't bad enough, she had the nerve to roll her eyes. "Calm down. It's not what you think," she said, as if I'd just caught her doing something trivial, not sitting on our bed with some stranger. The guy stood up slowly, tall and broad-shouldered, not even attempting to look guilty. He stared down at me like I was the one out of place. Something snapped in my brain. Not what I think I repeated, my voice low and dangerous. "I saw you, Claire. Don't play games with me." She stood up too, folding her arms like she was about to scold me. "You're overreacting," she said, her voice wavering. This is just, she trailed off, but then her face hardened, her posture stiffened, and she changed completely. "Okay, fine. You caught me. What now?" The arrogance in her voice hit me like a slap. For a moment I stood there stunned, the room tilting as if the ground was falling out from under me. My brain couldn't process what she had just said. "What now?" I echoed, my voice shaking with disbelief. I wasn't sure if I was going to explode or collapse. She didn't even try to deny it. Claire stood there like I had caught her sneaking a snack in the middle of the night, not this. The guy this stranger watched with that same smug grin, not saying a word, just waiting for whatever came next. The confidence oozing off him told me this wasn't his first time here. He was comfortable, used to being in my home. I wanted to punch him, but something stopped me. The anger I should have felt, the rage was gone, replaced by something colder and darker, an empty space where my fury should have been. "What's wrong with you?" I finally asked, my voice low and strained. I barely recognized it. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything, but the weight of my words hung in the air like smoke. "You've been cheating on me in our bed, and now you're asking me, what now?" Claire sighed, like the whole situation was exhausting to her. She crossed her arms and looked at me like I was being overly dramatic. "Jake," she said slowly, her voice dripping with condescension, "I don't know what you want me to say. This just happened, okay? You weren't supposed to come home so early. I almost laughed at that." She was sorry because I came home too soon, not because of what I walked in on, not because she betrayed me in the worst way possible. "What? You thought I'd be okay with this if I hadn't caught you?" I shot back, my hands shaking as I clenched them into fists, trying to keep myself from losing control. She rolled her eyes again, and I felt the temperature in the room drop a few more degrees. "You haven't been paying attention to me for months," she snapped. "You're always busy with work or your stupid hobbies. When was the last time we even spent a night together and there it was the blame?" She was flipping it around on me, like it was my fault, like I had driven her into the arms of this guy. "So it's my fault you're screwing some random guy in our bed?" I asked, laughing bitterly. I looked over at him. He still hadn't moved, just standing there, arms crossed, that same infuriating smile plastered on his face. "Who even is this guy?" I gestured toward him, my voice rising. "How long has this been going on?" Claire, she hesitated for the first time, glancing at him as if deciding how much to reveal. That hesitation told me everything. "It's none of your business," she muttered finally, her voice quieter but still defiant. It just happened, that phrase again, like she had tripped and fallen into this mess by accident. I'm your husband, I said, enunciating every word like I was explaining something to a child. You don't get to say it's none of my business. How long Claire bit her lip, irritated, before finally giving in. A few months, okay? Does it matter? A few months. My head spun as the pieces started to fall into place. All those nights she stayed out late for work, the sudden business trips, the little lies I hadn't questioned, each one now felt like a fresh stab to the gut. Claire, noticing my silence, sighed again, softer this time, like she was tired of the conversation. Jake, I'm sorry you found out like this, but things haven't been right between us for a long time, and you know it for the first time since I'd walked in. I saw something other than coldness in her eyes. Maybe it was regret, or maybe she just realized how much she'd misjudged me. But I wasn't going to let her twist this narrative. Oh, don't you dare make this about us, I said, stepping closer, my voice dangerous. You've been lying to me for months, screwing this guy behind my back, and you expect me to what? Pretend it's my fault, that I wasn't good enough for you. She remained silent, her arms wrapped tightly around her chest, her jaw clenched, but she didn't deny it. Then, without hesitation, she dropped the final bombshell, I don't love you anymore. Jake, her words hit me like a slap, sucking all the air out of the room in an instant. I stood there, frozen, as those words hung in the air like a death sentence. I didn't know what I expected her to say, but it wasn't that. Her declaration sliced through the silence, as sharp and cold as a blade. I don't love you anymore. Jake, time seemed to slow down. The world shrank to just her face, her lips still twisted in that defiant expression. I didn't respond right away. What was there to say? I couldn't even feel the ground beneath my feet anymore. She had just ripped me open, leaving me raw and exposed, and I struggled to breathe. You don't love me anymore, I repeated, like saying it might somehow make it more real or less. I wasn't sure which. She just stared at me, no flinch, no hesitation. This was it. This was the real Claire, cold, unapologetic, not even pretending anymore. Before I could fully process her words, he finally spoke for the first time. I'd almost forgotten he was there, but his voice jolted me out of my daze. Yeah, man, maybe it's time to move on, huh? His tone was casual, so dismissive, like he was offering me friendly advice, as if this whole thing could just be brushed off. My body shook with a mix of shock and fury I could barely contain. Move on, I spat, stepping toward him, fists clenched. Move on? You're screwing my wife in my house, in my bed, and you think I'm just going to move on? He didn't back down. In fact, he smiled. A smile so infuriating I wanted to smash every tooth in his face. Look, I get it, he said too calmly. This sucks, okay? But Claire's right. You two haven't been happy for a while, and honestly, you can't blame her for he didn't get to finish. I lunged at him, my fist connecting with his jaw so hard I thought I'd broken my hand. He staggered back, clutching his face, eyes wide with shock. Clearly, he hadn't expected me to fight back, but the surge of adrenaline drowned out the pain in my hand, and for the first time in a long while I felt alive again. I wanted to hit him again, to tear him apart, but Claire was between us in an instant, shoving me back, her hands pounding against my chest. Stop, she screamed, her face twisted in rage. What the hell is wrong with you? What's wrong with me? I shouted back, my voice hoarse with disbelief. You're seriously asking me that? I just caught you cheating on me and you think I'm the problem here, but she wasn't listening. Her focus was on him, rushing to his side like he was the victim, like he was the one who needed her. She touched his face gently, checking where I'd hit him, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I stood there, breathing hard, watching her fuss over him like I didn't exist. Are you okay? She whispered to him. Her voice soft, concerned the way she used to talk to me. Like I had been replaced, just like that. He nodded, wiping the blood from his lip, throwing me a smug glance over her shoulder. Yeah, I'm fine. Your boy here just needs to calm down. My blood boiled, the rage surging through me, ready to explode again. But then Claire turned to me, her face twisted with disgust. Disgust. She looked at me like I was the problem, like I had broken something precious. You're a damn psycho, Jake, she spat, standing between us like a shield. Look at you, losing it like a maniac. You think hitting him is going to fix this? You think this changes anything? I felt myself unraveling, my grip on reality slipping with every word she threw at me. Why, Claire, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why him? Why now? Why any of this? She sighed, looking at me like I was a child asking too many questions. Because Jake, she said, her voice cold and emotionless. I told you I don't love you anymore. I haven't for a long time. Her words hit me again, just as hard as before, but this time it felt different. This time there was finality. She meant it. She was done with me, done with us. You could have just left, I whispered, staring at her. You didn't have to. I gestured at the two of them, standing there together, united against me. You didn't have to do this. She rolled her eyes, as if I were being overly dramatic. Yeah, I could have, but I didn't. And now we're here. So what are you going to do about it? Her challenge hung in the air, daring me to react. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years I didn't recognize her. This wasn't the woman I had married. This wasn't the person I had built my life with. Claire was gone. In her place stood someone else, someone cruel, indifferent, and completely detached. What am I going to do? I echoed, my voice eerily calm now. I glanced at the door, my escape, the only sane option left. The weight of my decision pressed down on me, suffocating. But I knew what I had to do. I turned back to her one last time, my voice quiet but steady. I'm leaving, and with that, I walked out, leaving them behind, leaving everything behind. I could hear her calling after me, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Because for the first time, I realized I didn't need her anymore. As I stepped out the front door, everything felt surreal, like I had just stepped off a cliff and was falling in slow motion. My house, the place I had called home for years now, felt like a stranger's. I left them behind in that house, Claire and that guy. God, I couldn't even think his name without feeling sick. How long had he been in my bed? That thought echoed in my mind, but I shoved it down, refusing to let it take hold. Not yet. The night air hit me hard, cold and biting, but it was what I needed. The chill grounded me. My mind raced, trying to grasp something solid, but all I felt was an expanding emptiness inside. Claire's voice still echoed in my head, I don't love you anymore. It was as if she had rehearsed those words for months, just waiting for the right moment to deliver the final blow. And it worked. I wasn't angry anymore. The rage had dissolved the moment I walked out. Now there was just nothing. I felt numb, like my mind had shut down to keep me from crashing. I didn't know where I was going. I just kept walking, my feet carrying me down the street. Past houses lit up with Halloween decorations, families enjoying their simple, drama-free lives. The irony wasn't lost on me. My life had just exploded, but the world kept turning like nothing had happened. I ended up at the park, the one where Claire and I used to walk our dog. It's strange how something as simple as a park bench could suddenly feel like a punch to the stomach. I collapsed onto it, running my fingers through my hair, my gaze fixed on the ground. Everything around me was quiet, but inside my head, chaos was raging. I couldn't stop replaying the moment from just 30 minutes ago, her eyes, the way she stood there, defending him, as if he were the one who needed protection. It was the ultimate betrayal. My phone was in my hand, trembling as I swiped through my contacts. Who was I even going to call? Where do you turn when your entire world just imploded? I considered calling my brother, but what would I say? Hey, guess what? My wife's been cheating on me and she doesn't love me anymore. Want to grab a beer? The truth was, I wasn't ready to talk to anyone. No one could fix this. No one could rewind the past few months and repair the disaster I hadn't even noticed unfolding right under my nose. My hand tightened around my phone as my chest constricted. I hadn't cried, not yet. I hadn't fully broken down, but the empty feeling inside me kept growing, and I had no idea what would happen when it finally overtook me. Then something shifted in my chest, an unexpected realization that hit me like a wave. I was free. It started small, creeping through the haze of disbelief and pain, but it grew stronger the more I thought about it. Claire had been right about one thing: our marriage hadn't been great for a while. But I had been blind, convincing myself it was just a phase, something we would get through as we always had. I'd ignored all the warning signs, the distance, the unexplained nights where she would pull away from me. I told myself she was stressed and that she'd come back to me. But she didn't. And now I was free from it, free from the pretense, free from the lies. She was no longer my responsibility, no longer someone I had to save or protect. She didn't love me, fine. That wasn't something I could fix or fight for anymore. The more I dwelled on it, the stronger the strange feeling of relief washed over me. For the first time in months, I could truly breathe. But with that relief came something darker, something harder to face. She had never loved me, not the way I had loved her, not the way I had fought for us. Claire hadn't just given up on me now, she had probably checked out a long time ago, waiting for the right moment to drop this bomb. And it hadn't hurt her, not the way it was breaking me. I sat there, my phone in hand, and before I knew it, I had dialed her number. My thumb hovered over the call button, my heart pounding in my chest. Why was I doing this? I didn't even know what I wanted to say. I didn't need an apology, and I certainly didn't want more lies, but I needed something, anything to break the suffocating silence in my head. Before I could second-guess myself, I pressed call. It rang once, twice, and then she answered. Her voice was low, hesitant, as if she wasn't sure how to handle this. Jake, what do you want? I almost laughed at the question. What do I want? How about my life back? How about a time machine? Instead, I stayed silent, gripping the phone so hard it felt like it might snap. My mind raced, searching for the right words, something that would make sense of all this, something that would give me closure. But when I finally spoke, all that came out was, why? The silence on the other end stretched on, as if she was carefully considering how much truth she was willing to offer now that the damage was done. Then she said, because I didn't think you'd ever figure it out. My grip on the phone loosened, her words hanging in the air, cold and deliberate. She didn't think I'd figure it out. That's what this had been to her, a game she thought she could keep playing until I stumbled upon the truth. I wanted to scream, to demand more from her, but I was exhausted. Her words had drained whatever fight I had left. In that moment I realized there would never be an explanation that made this better. No reason would make sense of the betrayal. She had simply decided I wasn't worth being honest with anymore. And with that final blow, I hung up. I let the phone slip from my hand, falling onto the bench beside me. The park was unnervingly quiet, the soft rustling of leaves the only sound. Her words echoed in my mind, hollow and indifferent. Because I didn't think you'd ever figure it out, that's all it had been to her, a secret she planned to keep until she no longer had to. No guilt, no second thoughts. She never intended to tell me the truth. In her mind, I was just an obstacle, a fool she could manipulate for as long as it suited her. I stared up at the dark sky, trying to make sense of it all. I wanted to be angry, to hate her, but all I felt was emptiness. It was like everything inside me had been hollowed out, and I was just sitting in the ruins of a life I thought was real. This was more than her cheating, it was the realization that I hadn't mattered to her the way I thought I did. I wasn't a husband in her eyes, I was just convenient. The worst part was how she made me doubt myself, question everything I had done. For months, I had been trying harder, sacrificing time and energy to make things better between us. And all that time, she had been laughing behind my back, taking advantage of my blind faith. Suddenly I stood up, the stillness of the night unbearable. I couldn't sit there anymore. I needed to move, to do something, anything to shake this feeling. I walked quickly, not caring where I was headed, my feet pounding the pavement as I left the park and headed toward town. My mind was racing with thoughts I couldn't sort out. I didn't know what I was searching for, I just wanted to escape the crushing weight of betrayal. As I passed darkened shops and silent bars, her voice echoed in my head, mocking me. You haven't been paying attention. You've been distant. You weren't supposed to come home so early. The excuses she had thrown at me were laughable now. She hadn't even tried to lie convincingly because, to her, I wasn't worth the effort. I kept walking, my thoughts spiraling, until something snapped inside me. I wasn't going to let her win. She had already taken too much my time, my trust, my sense of self. She wasn't going to take my dignity too. I refused to become the broken man she anticipated. I wasn't going to collapse under the weight of her deceit. If she believed I would just quietly fade away, allowing her to continue her double life, she was gravely mistaken. I stopped walking, standing at the edge of a busy intersection, watching cars speed by. My mind was clear now, the fog of disbelief lifting. This wasn't just about her infidelity, it was about me reclaiming the parts of myself she had tried to chip away at with her lies and manipulations. I didn't want her anymore, that was certain, but I wasn't going to let her walk away without facing the consequences. I wasn't going to be the passive, oblivious husband she expected, the one who would fade into the background as she moved on with her life. No, Claire wasn't going to escape that easily. I turned, heart pounding with a newfound sense of purpose. For months, I had played the role of the devoted, clueless husband, doing everything in my power to keep our marriage intact while she was busy destroying it behind my back. But now my eyes were open. I saw her for what she truly was: selfish, deceitful and cruel. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady for the first time as I scrolled through my contacts. I knew exactly who I needed to call. It wasn't a friend or family member, no. This required something more definitive. I needed a lawyer. This wasn't just about ending the marriage, it was about taking control. I dialed the number and waited, each ring stoking the fire inside me. When the lawyer's office picked up, I didn't hesitate. "Hi, I need to talk to someone about filing for divorce," I said, my voice calm and steady. "And I'm going to need someone good. I want everything on the table." The woman on the other end didn't miss a beat. "Of course," she replied. "Let's get you set up with a consultation." Can I get some basic information? I provided everything she needed, each word solidifying the reality of what was happening. I was done playing the fool. Claire could keep her lover, keep her lies, but she would no longer have power over me. By the time I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt all night: control. For months, I had been on autopilot, letting Claire dictate the terms of our relationship, bending over backward to keep her happy while she was busy tearing everything apart. But not anymore. I was done being the victim. The relief that swept over me wasn't complete. The pain was still there, but now I had direction, a purpose. I wasn't just reeling from the betrayal, I was moving forward. I took a deep breath, staring at the empty street in front of me. The road stretched out, dark and uncertain, but for the first time in a long while I wasn't afraid. Whatever was coming next, divorce, the fallout, the mess, I was ready. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing for sure: I would come out of this stronger than before. Claire had no idea what kind of surprise awaited her. The next morning, everything seemed sharper. The fog that had clouded my mind the night before had vanished, replaced by crystal-clear determination. The sunlight filtered through the blinds of my hotel room, casting a harsh light on the reality of what I needed to do. I was done letting Claire control my life. I wasn't her puppet anymore. After making a few calls, I was set. The lawyer I'd spoken to wasn't just competent, he was ruthless. Exactly what I needed. Claire wasn't going to walk away from this without a fight. She had played me for too long, and now she was going to face the consequences. She thought she could hide behind her web of lies, manipulate me forever. That was her fatal mistake. Around noon, I returned to the house. This time, I didn't sneak in, and I didn't feel the weight of dread like I had the night before. I was in control now. I parked in front and walked up the steps with a confidence I hadn't felt in months. The door was unlocked, and when I stepped inside, it felt like entering a battlefield. But this time I wasn't unarmed. Claire was in the kitchen, sipping her coffee like it was just another ordinary day, as if she hadn't detonated a bomb in our marriage the night before. When she saw me, she barely reacted, just raised an eyebrow like I was an inconvenience. "You're back," she said, her tone casual, not even bothering to hide her annoyance. "I thought you'd be staying out for a while." I didn't answer her question. Instead, I stood there, taking in the sight of the woman I once thought I knew. Her hair was pulled up in a messy bun, and she wore one of those oversized sweaters she loved. The sight of her sitting there, calm and indifferent, made my blood boil. But I kept it together. I wasn't here to explode or give her the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. "I talked to a lawyer," I said flatly, watching her closely. Her expression shifted, just for a moment, and she set her mug down, narrowing her eyes. "A lawyer? For what?" "For a divorce," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm done, Claire. You wanted out, you got it." She blinked, clearly caught off guard by how quickly I had moved. The shock was brief, but it was there, and I savored it. "Jake, don't be ridiculous," she said, her voice softening as she switched tactics. "We don't need to get lawyers involved. We can figure this out. The sheer audacity made me want to laugh. She had the nerve to cheat on me, lie to me for months, and now she thought we could figure it out over coffee. "There's nothing to figure out," I said coldly. "I've made up my mind." She stood, crossing her arms defensively, and I could see her mind working, scrambling to regain control of the situation. "You're really going to throw everything away because of last night?" she asked, her tone almost mocking. "Come on, Jake, I know you're hurt, but don't make a rash decision." My jaw clenched. "This isn't about last night, Claire. This is about you lying to me for months. You threw away our marriage long before I caught you with him." Her face darkened, and she stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "So what? You're going to punish me now? Ruin both our lives because you can't handle the truth?" It was unbelievable how she twisted it back on me, as if I were the unreasonable one, as if she hadn't destroyed everything we had. The old anger flared up, the urge to scream at her, to make her understand the depth of her betrayal. But I wasn't here to argue. I had a plan, and I was going to stick to it. "No, Claire," I said evenly. "I'm not going to ruin our lives, but you're about to get exactly what you deserve." Her eyes flashed with confusion and fear. She had no idea what was coming. "I've already started the paperwork," I continued, holding her gaze. "The divorce will be official soon. But that's not all. I'm going for everything. The house, the accounts, everything we built together is mine now. I made sure of that." Her jaw dropped, the color draining from her face as the reality of my words sank in. For once, she didn't have a snappy comeback. "You think I didn't know?" I pressed, stepping closer. "All those months you were sneaking around, you thought I was blind. You thought I didn't notice. But I did. I just stayed silent because I wanted to make sure you buried yourself. And now, You've lost it all." Claire's arrogant mask crumbled, her eyes widening in panic. "Jake, wait, but I wasn't done. I was on a roll now, and every word hit her like a bullet. You thought I'd just accept it, didn't you? That I'd quietly disappear and let you carry on with your little affair? Well, guess what? You're not winning this time. You wanted to throw away our marriage? Fine. But you're going to lose everything along the way." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She was scrambling, trying to grasp some sense of control, but it was already too late. The tables had turned and now she was the one losing. Finally, she found her voice, but it was shaky. You can't do this. I cut her off, my voice slicing through her panic. "There's no we anymore, Claire. You made sure of that. You wanted your freedom and now you've got it, but it's going to cost you everything." The silence that followed was suffocating. Claire stood there, her face drained of color, her confidence shattered. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out how to claw her way back, how to regain control, but there was nothing left for her to do. She had lost. I held all the cards now. Without saying another word, I turned and walked out, leaving her standing in the wreckage she'd created. This time I didn't feel crushed by betrayal. This time I felt lighter. Claire had no idea what was coming next. She thought she had it all figured out, but now she was the one in for an unexpected shock. I walked out of the house, out of her life, and felt something I hadn't anticipated: peace. The weight of the past few months, or maybe even years, started to lift as soon as I closed that door behind me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was in control. And Claire? She had no clue what was about to hit her. But the real storm didn't come from my words or from the divorce filing or even the threat of taking everything. No, the storm arrived when reality struck her harder than any ultimatum I could have given. I didn't have to wait long to watch her world start to crumble. That evening, back at the hotel, I was going over the paperwork with my lawyer on the phone. My plan was solid, and with the evidence I'd collected, the bank records, phone logs, even some well-timed photos of her with the other guy, there was no way she could walk away unscathed. She had been careless, reckless even, and now it was going to cost her everything. As soon as I hung up, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was from Claire. I paused for a moment before reading it. "Jake, we need to talk." Please, that was it. No long apology, no excuses, just a brittle, desperate plea. She was starting to crack. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking she could still control the story. Instead, I leaned back and waited. I knew what was coming next. It didn't take long. 20 minutes later, she called. I let it ring. Then again, and again, each time ignoring it, imagining her panic on the other end. The once composed and confident Claire, who had dismissed me and told me she didn't love me anymore, was now feeling the walls close in. I could almost see it, her pacing back and forth in the kitchen, staring at her phone, her mind racing. But I didn't answer. Not yet. Another message popped up. "This one longer, Jake. Please just pick up. I'm sorry, I don't want this to end like this. Can we talk? I made a mistake, okay? Please." I stared at the screen, a bitter laugh escaping. Now she wanted to talk. Now, when she knew she had lost control, I could practically hear the shift in her voice, the panic, the desperation creeping in. She was realizing that this wasn't going to end on her terms. She was no longer in charge. Still, I didn't respond. Instead, I grabbed my jacket and headed out. I wasn't going to sit around and let her manipulate me, twist the situation to make herself the victim. She made her choices, and now she would have to live with them. As I walked through the cold night streets, my phone buzzed again. But this time it wasn't a call or a text. It was something else, a screenshot from an unknown number. I stopped, heart pounding as I opened it. My blood ran cold. It was a photo of me from last night, sitting on the park bench, head in my hands. Attached to it was a message: "Thought you'd want to know where your wife's been the last few months. This isn't over." It was from him. He had been watching me. I stood frozen, staring at the screen, my stomach churning. This wasn't just about Claire anymore. It was about him. He wasn't just some random guy who had wandered into her life. He was playing a deeper, more dangerous game, and now he was coming for me. A wave of anger and fear surged through me. I didn't know if this was a threat or just another twisted mind game, but either way, I wasn't going to be intimidated. I had already endured too much to let this guy shake me. Before I could decide what to do next, my phone rang again. This time it was Claire. I picked up, my voice cold. "What do you want, Claire?" She hesitated, like she hadn't expected me to answer. "Jake, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," she said, her voice cracking. For the first time, I heard real panic in her tone. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I swear I didn't mean for what to go this far, I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. I wasn't in the mood for more half-truths. Tom, she said quickly, as if saying his name explained everything. He's not who you think he is, Jake. He's dangerous. This wasn't supposed to happen. She trailed off, her words tangled in fear. My mind raced. Dangerous. What the hell did that mean? Claire, what are you talking about? I demanded, my patience wearing thin. You need to start telling me the truth now. I didn't know how to get out, she admitted, her voice trembling. He wouldn't leave me alone. It started as a fling, and I thought I could control it. But then he started showing up everywhere. He's been watching you, Jake. Following you. I tried to end it, but he won't go away. My blood ran cold. I tightened my grip on the phone, my knuckles turning white. You brought this guy into our lives, I said, struggling to keep the fury from boiling over. And now you're telling me he's dangerous. She was crying now, her breath short and panicked. I'm so sorry. I thought I could handle it, but now it's out of control. He said he'd ruin everything if I left him. I didn't know what to do. I stood there, stunned, the world spinning around me. This wasn't just about her affair anymore. This was something darker, something far more twisted, and I hadn't seen it coming. Now I was stuck in the middle of it. My mind flashed back to the screenshot, the photo of me in the park. He had been watching me, stalking me, probably for weeks, and Claire had let it happen. She had let this psychopath into our lives, and now he was playing with both of us. You need to leave the house, I said firmly, cutting through her sobs. Go somewhere safe now. Jake, now I snapped, my tone sharp, interrupting her. I'll handle him before she could respond. I ended the call, my heart pounding. This was no longer about revenge, it had become a matter of survival. Tom had no idea what was about to come his way. I stood there in the middle of the street, trying to grasp the full magnitude of what was unfolding. This wasn't just an affair anymore, it had spiraled into something darker, something dangerous. Tom wasn't just Claire's lover, he was a threat, a predator who had been watching me, stalking me, all while playing twisted games with her. It wasn't just about betrayal anymore now, it was about staying alive. I picked up my pace, adrenaline coursing through me. My thoughts were racing, but one thing was clear: I had to confront Tom and put an end to this once and for all. Claire had gotten herself involved with someone who wasn't just using her, he was controlling her. And now it seemed he was trying to control me too, lurking in the shadows and pulling the strings. The idea that he had been watching me, keeping track of my every move, made my skin crawl. But this time I wasn't going to be blindsided. I wasn't going to let him win. I dialed another number, my brother Mike. He was the one person I could trust, the one person who wouldn't question me but would simply show up. Jake, everything okay? Mike answered, his voice laced with concern. Not really, I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. I need your help. Without missing a beat, Mike's tone shifted. Where are you? I gave him the address of a bar near my house and told him I'd meet him there in 20 minutes. I didn't have time to explain everything over the phone, and truthfully, I didn't even know where to begin. But one thing was certain: I couldn't confront Tom alone, not after everything Claire had just revealed. By the time I arrived at the bar, Mike was already there, leaning against his truck, his face tense, his eyes searching mine for answers. What's going on? He asked, his voice low but serious. You look like you've seen a ghost. I shook my head, struggling to find the right words. It's Claire. She's been cheating on me, but it's worse than that. The guy she's been seeing, Tommy's dangerous, Mike. He's been stalking me, following me for weeks, maybe even months. Claire tried to end it, but now he's threatening both of us. Mike's jaw clenched, his fists balling up at his sides. What do you mean he's been following you? I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshot Tom had sent, the photo of me sitting alone in the park, unaware that I was being watched. Mike's face darkened as he looked at the image. That bastard, he muttered, his voice full of anger. So what's the plan? I met his gaze, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I need to end this, Mike. I need to confront him, but I'm not going in blind. Claire said he's unpredictable, dangerous. I don't know what he's capable of. Mike nodded, his expression serious, his resolve clear. Then let's find out where he is. We'll handle this together.